On Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fans, in the last few hours, several developments have emerged that could have much bigger consequences than they appear at first glance. A young rookie may already be putting the future of a fan-favorite Viking in jeopardy, and one AFC franchise is reportedly showing serious interest in trying to pry away one of Minnesota's top playmakers. At the same time, growing speculation suggests Kevin O'Connell could still be looking to add help to the running game before the season kicks off. Vikings Nation, there's a lot happening behind the scenes right now, and you won't want to miss any of it. One of the toughest realities in the NFL is that fan favorites are never guaranteed safety. Every year, somebody we've grown attached to suddenly finds themselves fighting for snaps, fighting for a role, or fighting for a roster spot. And right now, there's a growing feeling that one player could be entering that exact situation. The moment Minnesota used the 51st overall pick on Jake Golday, people immediately focused on what he could become: an athletic linebacker, a versatile defender, a player capable of moving around Brian Flores' defense and creating problems from multiple alignments. But the deeper you look, the more complicated this gets. Golday isn't arriving just to sit and watch forever. The Vikings clearly see something special in him. They view him as a developmental piece with similarities to the role Andrew Van Ginkel has played so successfully. That alone should grab everyone's attention. Because if Golday develops the way coaches hope, somebody else could lose opportunities. That brings us to Ivan Pace Jr. Few players have earned the respect of the Purple Faithful the way Pace has. Undrafted, overlooked, constantly proving people wrong. Fans love that story. Teammates respect that story. But football is ruthless. Minnesota placed a low tender on him this offseason, and while no team stepped forward with an offer, the situation still feels worth watching. Alec Lewis recently pointed out that Flores values Pace's pass rush ability but doesn't necessarily want him on passing downs. That creates a fascinating challenge. If Golday starts showing versatility while also providing depth behind Blake Cashman and Eric Wilson, the competition becomes very real. Nobody is saying Pace is gone tomorrow. Far from it. But suddenly there's pressure, real pressure. And when training camp arrives, every rep could shape somebody's future. Meanwhile, former Vikings receiver Lucky Jackson is getting another opportunity, this time with the Detroit Lions. Part of me hopes his comeback story succeeds because football needs stories like that. Another part of me wishes it wasn't happening inside the division. Still, with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Jawan Jennings leading Minnesota's receiving group, the Vikings are probably comfortable watching that story unfold from a distance. The bigger question now is whether Jake Golday is simply a depth piece or the first sign of a changing linebacker room. Now let's shift to a conversation that seems to be gaining traction outside Minnesota more than inside it. It's the idea that another franchise may already be looking at one of our most talented young weapons and wondering whether they can pry him away. Whenever trade speculation starts surrounding a gifted receiver, fans naturally pay attention. And honestly, I get it. Jordan Addison has been a huge part of this offense since arriving. He may not be the face of the receiving room because Justin Jefferson exists, but that doesn't make him any less important. In fact, that's exactly why other teams are paying attention. The Ravens have reportedly been identified as a potential landing spot if Minnesota ever decided not to commit long-term. Think about that for a second. We're talking about a player who is still developing, still evolving, and still capable of producing far more than we've already seen. Last season didn't feel like his ceiling. Not even close. There's a strong argument that better quarterback play and a more stable offensive environment could unlock another level entirely. Yet outside voices continue wondering whether Addison truly wants to spend his entire prime as the second option behind Jefferson. That's the question fueling all of this. Does he eventually want to be a WR1 somewhere? Does he want an offense built around him? Those are fair questions, but they're also questions being asked from outside the building. From a Vikings perspective, moving Addison feels incredibly risky. Kevin O'Connell's offense thrives when defenses cannot focus on one player. Jefferson changes coverages. Addison punishes defenses for doing it. That combination matters more than people realize. There has even been discussion about Rashad Bateman potentially being included in some hypothetical package. And while Bateman is a talented player with Minnesota roots, let's be honest, trading away a young first-round receiver who is already producing for a player who may or may not replace that production would be difficult to justify unless the return became overwhelming. What makes this situation so interesting is that nobody truly knows how the front office views Addison's future beyond the next couple of years. The fifth-year option bought valuable time, but eventually the real decision arrives. Contracts get negotiated, priorities get revealed, and if Addison takes another step forward this season, that decision only becomes tougher. For now, he remains a critical part of the purple and gold, but the fact that teams are already being connected to him tells you everything you need to know about how respected his talent is around the league. Quick favor before we keep going. If you're enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel and jump into the comments. Some of the best conversations always come from Vikings fans sharing different perspectives on these stories. There's another discussion developing that might not dominate national headlines, but it could become incredibly important once the season begins. Because every Vikings fan remembers what happens when an offense becomes too dependent on one player carrying the load. Minnesota brought Aaron Jones back. Jordan Mason returns. Demon Claiborne enters the picture as a rookie. On paper, that seems like a solid room. Yet there's still a lingering question hanging over this backfield. Is there enough explosiveness, enough depth, enough insurance if things don't unfold as planned? That's where the name Jaylen Wright enters the conversation. The Dolphins running back isn't a superstar, not yet. But speed changes games in today's NFL. Defenses respect it, coaches design around it, and Wright has plenty of it. A reported 4.38 40-yard dash immediately catches your attention. What makes this possibility even more interesting is the connection to assistant head coach Frank Smith, who knows Miami's system extremely well. If Wright starts slipping down the Dolphins' depth chart, could Minnesota make a move? It's certainly not impossible. The price likely wouldn't be overwhelming, and that's one reason this idea continues to surface. The Vikings don't necessarily need another backup. What they need is somebody capable of becoming more than a backup. Somebody who can generate explosive plays and help reduce pressure on the quarterback position. Whether that quarterback ends up being Kyler Murray or someone else, the formula remains the same. A balanced offense makes life easier for everybody. Wright's college production at Tennessee showed legitimate upside. His athletic profile is exciting, and perhaps most importantly, he's still young enough to continue developing. The challenge is that Minnesota already has plenty of bodies competing in that room. Training camp will reveal a lot. Maybe Claiborne surprises people. Maybe Mason earns a bigger workload. Maybe Jones looks refreshed. If that happens, a trade becomes unnecessary. But if concerns start appearing during camp practices, don't be surprised if the front office starts exploring options. Successful teams are always searching for ways to improve around the margins. And sometimes the move nobody expects in June ends up making a difference in December. Every offseason, there's usually one player who starts generating quiet buzz long before the rest of the league notices. Not a superstar, not a high draft pick, just a young player steadily building momentum behind the scenes. This year, that player might be Elijah Williams. If you followed his career at Morgan State, you already know the production was impressive. Tackles, sacks, disruption all over the field. The challenge was translating that success to the NFL level. As an undrafted rookie last season, opportunities were limited. 42 snaps, 3 tackles, 1 pressure, nothing that was going to dominate headlines. But development doesn't always show up immediately on Sundays. Sometimes it happens in the weight room. Sometimes it happens during off-season programs. Sometimes it happens when nobody is paying attention. According to reports, Williams looks noticeably bigger and stronger than he did a year ago. More prepared physically for what this defense demands from its frontline players. Tyler Furness even labeled him a potential breakout star. That's not a small claim, especially when you consider the expectations surrounding Minnesota's defensive front. What stands out most is the timing. Young defensive linemen often make significant jumps between year 1 and year 2. The game slows down, confidence grows, technique improves. Suddenly a player looks completely different than the one fans saw as a rookie. We've watched that happen before, and there's growing belief Williams could be next. If he can provide meaningful snaps while others continue recovering or getting acclimated, that could have a real impact on the depth chart. Brian Flores loves versatile, aggressive defenders. He loves players who can create flexibility across the defense. Williams may not become a starter overnight. He may not become a household name immediately. But if he starts flashing during training camp and preseason, people are going to notice. Every great defense needs unexpected contributors. Every contender needs players who outperform expectations. Right now, Elijah Williams feels like one of those names quietly gaining momentum, and those are often the stories that end up becoming impossible to ignore once the season gets underway. That's what makes this stage of the offseason so fascinating. Some battles are unfolding right in front of us. Others are developing quietly behind the scenes. Jake Golday is creating legitimate competition. Jordan Addison's future continues generating outside speculation. Jaylen Wright remains an intriguing possibility if Minnesota decides it needs more speed in the backfield. And Elijah Williams could be preparing for the kind of leap that changes how people view this defense. One thing feels certain. The closer we get to training camp, the more important these storylines become. Let me know which one you'll be watching most closely and whether you think any of them could have a major impact on the season ahead. Until next time, stay loud, stay proud, and keep believing in the purple and gold. Skol Vikings, let's go!